Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yachts, and today is part two of my interview with Seth Greenky. He is the president of Greenky Management. He is a manager, a musician, and he was also a record producer. Enjoy. All right, so you do all this. You're record producer, manager. You play eight instruments. You can write songs. So how do you end up with? How do we transition into managing actors?
Yeah, what went wrong?
I don't know. I'm just like,
I've been working in the music industry, and the industry changed
yeah.
almost overnight. One time I had produced a group, and I wanted to bring them to my friend who was head of A&R pop R&B at Polygram. I think it was Polydor at the time. And so I called his number, and I said, let me talk to Rick. They said he doesn't work here anymore. Well, in the music industry, A&R people, they go to company to company, they float around. He'd been there a few years. So I said, okay, who's in charge of pop R&B? And the person who answered the phone, the girl said, I can't tell you. So I figured she was new. I said, I'll hold on till you find out. She said, no, I can't tell you. I said, what do you mean you can't tell me? Go find somebody who's been there longer than you have and ask them. She says, no, I cannot tell you. We are not accepting unsolicited material. Well, that used to be the lifeblood of record companies. People knocking on the doors or making appointments. They meet with people they knew.
And this is in the 80s, I assume.
This is in the late 70s, early 80s.
That's when corporate structuring started to really become a thing.
Yeah, and when Bertelsmann bought CBS and RCA used to be competitors for 100 years.
Yeah.
And then Bertelsmann bought them both. It was like the Dodgers and the Yankees were the same team. So there was less competition for product. And if you didn't know specifically who to ask for, and some companies that still knew them, they were still there, but they were being let go. And if you didn't know who to ask for, then they wouldn't tell you and you couldn't expose new material. I said, where are you getting new material? And this were a lot of people from my era kind of dissipated away from the music industry. So
this is the and the same thing kind of happens with Hollywood as well.
Yeah.
They start solidifying and it starts being run more like a business. Like you have the business people coming in and they're not the creatives. I mean, this is kind of how George Lucas talks about. This is how he kind of got hired, is pretty much put these new people in charge, and they didn't know any better, so they hired people from UCLA. Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are very frustrating about it, and it cuts down. You lose a lot of creativity. You lose a lot of new voices. But they were just starting. The internet was just starting to happen, and they were just saying who's got the most likes or the most followers on the internet, and so they were changing the paradigm for finding new artists. Or you had to be a music attorney that they knew, and it just got frustrating because it would take 6 months to create. You're creating their product for them from demo to finished product. Usually they want you to bring a finished product, and it would take a lot of money and a lot of time invested, and then you're saying, here it is. Do you want our finished product? There wasn't even really much development involved. And then you'd sit around waiting to get it.
Yeah, and then they would just put it up, right? That's kind of
if you were lucky enough for them to, lease the master from you with no guarantees. So it became, we're making the stuff for you. You're not really investing much, except you're taking the product you think will be a hit and putting it out. Which is why I did my own recording. I wanted to prove that it was airworthy, which I did do. And I didn't put any records in stores because I remember the story about private stock records that had, at that time, $6 million worth of backing. And they had some hit records and they were pressing the records up. The stores were selling the records, but But the record company wasn't making any money because the distributors were slow or never paying the record company. So every time they pressed the record, they lost money. And they had a couple of big hits. They had I think they had My Eyes Adore You. They had Samantha Fox or Samantha sang a BJ's song. And they had a few hit records, but they went bankrupt because they were printing records for other people to sell, not collecting the money.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm not going to print, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 singles, put in stores for which I'll never get paid. I'll just print up 500 copies, promo copies. And I had a bunch of radio stations playing it. I was on playlists throughout the tri-state area. So when I did have a meeting with a couple of record companies, they say, well, how many have you sold? And I'd say none. I'm not trying to sell any. I'm just trying to prove that one person without any promo, because of the quality of the material, it gets on the air. The DJs play it. So imagine what you guys can do with your promotion. But they didn't get it. And because I had zero sales. Oh, that was one of my near last.
Dealing with people who just see it as numbers and cents. They're not really.
So
You're just dealing with the numbers guys who don't have any creativity.
Yeah. Or enough thought to see, well, listen, this guy, amateur, it's getting on the air, wouldn't stay on the air if they weren't getting requests to hear it again.
Exactly.
I wanted them to take over them to take over the distribution and do some promotion.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
Yeah, don't they see that you're already doing half the battle here?
I've proven it's going to. Yeah, and if a song's on the radio, it will sell just because it's there.
Yeah, exactly. That's
so that's showbiz. So one of my artists, one of my musicians, said he had a SAG card. Not that I really knew what that was, but he said he was an actor. He said, "Can I help him with his acting career?" I said, "I have no idea, but I'll give it a try." And that's how I started working with acting. I learned by doing. I could spend 5-10 minutes talking about my brush with acting, which is kind of neat.
Talk about it.
All righty. For that, much to your chagrin, we're going back to first grade, where I had a small role as an Indian chief. I had about 2 or 3 lines that included, I remember this one, "Me Want Firewater." All the PC crowd can get all over that one, but this is when I was in first grade. So
that's what it was referred to at that time.
Right. And we're, stereotyping, that they just wanted to drink whiskey, but it was just a line in a kid's play in first grade.
Yeah.
And it meant absolutely nothing, but I could say, those 3 words, and that was it. When I got to second grade, my second grade teacher said, "I want you for the lead of my play." I didn't want to do it because I knew I had a hard time remembering other people's words. I was good in school, but I couldn't memorize for the sake of memorization. And I knew that even when I was 7 years old, it had to make sense to me, or it had to come from within me. And that proved true later, because when I was singing other people's songs to mix with some of my songs, I had trouble remembering the lyrics to somebody else's songs. But I really never had trouble with my songs because they came from within. But here I am in second grade, being tasked with being the lead of this play, which I don't remember what it was, nor my character. And I could not remember the script to save my life. So my mother said, "Put the script under your pillow and sleep on it overnight." And even as a 7-year-old, I said, "That makes no sense to me." But I tried it. In the morning, I got nothing. So the night of the play comes, and I start inserting lines from the second act into the first act, going blank. It's like who did those teen movies like 16 Candles? What was the name of it?
John Hughes.
John Hughes. It was like a John Hughes movie where you're up on stage. It's a nightmare where you got everybody in the school laughing at you. You're totally humiliated. And I knew and that's what happened. And so the teacher had to stand off to the side and say every one of my words for me to get me through the play.
So they Marlon Brando'd you.
I am never going to do. I said I'll never try to be an actor again. I had no real desire to do that.
Yeah.
So flash forward about 20 years later, I had a roommate 91st Street. And he was a wannabe actor from Racine, Wisconsin. He wanted to get acting jobs. I didn't know about acting agents at the time. I didn't know about casting directors at the time. So I said, he said, there's this soap, and they're looking for. He heard through the grapevine that they're looking for a guy from a young doctor who just emerged coming back from the jungles of Brazil. I had long hair, longer than this, and I had a beard, and so, so I said to him, "Why don't you just call him and ask him for an audition?" He said, my natural tendency is, I find a way around something. I find an answer up, around, through, under. So I wanted to prove a point to him that he could get an audition if he wanted it. So I sat with the TV, and long before VCRs, and just sat there with the TV. First, I had to look up in the TV guide when the show was on. I looked up the show, sat down in front of the TV with a notepad. And at the end of the show, I looked for the credits. Now, because I was a record producer, I looked for producer in the credits. So I wrote down the name of the producer. And then I got out the old phone book, New York City phone book this thick. I was through the pages, and I found ABC TV. I called up, and they had less guardrails up at that time. So I called up and I asked for the name of the show. They said, "Hold on one second." They connected me to the show. I think it was All My Children. And they said, "All My Children." And I said, "I'd like to speak to Joe Blow, please." 1 second. And sure enough, Joe Blow gets on the phone. And I said, "Hello, Joe. I understand you're looking for an actor for this doctor who comes out of the jungles of Brazil." He said, "That's right." He said, "Would you like to come in an audition?" I said, "Yes." So I went into the audition the next day, and I had no idea what I was doing. No clue. When I told my roommate I had an audition, he said, "What are you going to do?" "I'll go. How hard could it be?" Having forgotten my experience in second grade. So I got to the audition at West 66th Street, West End Avenue, and I walk in, I check in, and they hand me 3 or 4 pages, which is called sides. It's a part of the script you're going to audition with. I'd never seen the stuff before, so she saw my concern. She says, "Oh, you can take a few minutes in the other room to look it over." Now, keep in mind, I don't know what a casting director is. I don't know what sides are. I have no clue. I'm as clueless as you can possibly be. And then when I started looking at the script, I flashed back to second grade. I said, "Oh my God, what have I gotten myself into?" And I became an instant dyslexic with words jumping from one page to another, turning around upside down and backwards. I could not. So I'm trying to do the one hand, two ducks, one hand, two ducks, three squawking geese routine with the script. I'm trying to read the script and memorize it as best I can. And I'm having no luck. So, okay, what's the first line I'm going to say? Maybe that will kickstart me. She says to me this line, and then I say that. I say, okay. So they call me in, and they take me to what might be the set, because it was all dressed, all well lit, and there was a couch, the living room. It was probably the set. And then this woman comes out, probably one of the series regulars, dressed camera ready, beautiful hair and makeup, low cut and pushed up. So she sits down on the, before I sit down next to her, when I came out, there were 3 people in these director style chairs. And one was probably the guy I spoke to on the phone. One was probably the casting director, and one was probably another producer. So they introduced themselves. They asked me to introduce myself. And they say, I can keep the sides in my hand, which I learned later would be common when you're doing a cold read. Read was the term I had no clue. So I had the script in my hands, and they say, "Would you shave and cut your hair for the role?" I said, "Well, that was something I didn't want to do." Well, I said, "Well, he just got out of the jungles of Brazil, right?" Well, I think a couple of them looked at each other, figured that was a detail they'll deal with later. So I sat down on the couch, and this gorgeous woman comes, sits next to me, and presses up against me, all her body parts. She's in the moment. She's acting. She's looking at me deep in the eyes. And it's, you ever see The Honeymooners where Jackie Gleason goes, hamana, 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 hamana?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that was me. So I'm trying to look at the script and trying not to look down on her inappropriately because she was slammed up against me. And I just looking at the script and I was going, did you miss me when I was away? And I could see the three people in the big chairs out of the corner of my eye. They're looking at each other like, what, whose idea was this? Does anybody know this guy? Somebody's getting fired. So they mercifully called it. They said, someone of them said, thank you. I said, thank you. And I left. So when I got back, my roommate Jim said, how did it go? I said, it was a total disaster, but I got an audition, so you can too. So that was my brush with acting.
Yeah. Wow. So you went through all that just to prove the point.
Just to prove the point that if you put your mind to it, you can get your audition. Only after I did mine, they said no more auditions from people we don't know.
Oh yeah, really? Oh,
probably. Somebody got fired. You know, who let that guy in here? Anyway, so what's your next question?
Well, all right. So you're transitioning in, so how does transitioning into actors like?
Okay, yeah. So I had the one client who was a musician, but he was also an actor. So I started finding out about casting directors, and then it turned out that one of my early clients was referred to me by a mutual friend. She knew I'd been a manager in the music business, so she recommended me. And she had a 30, 40-year reputation as an actress. So it gave me immediate credibility with casting directors. So I got to know some casting directors, and I got to see what a truly talented actor looked like performing and what they have to do. And she had already won an Emmy.
You mean they didn't do this? How did you?
No, I saw her do a one-woman show, and she completely transformed on stage. It was amazing, and she's the standard by which I've judged, clients or potential clients.
So when you're trying to get like your feet wet with this job, are you because you strike me as the type that would like find out where they hang out and go and meet them.
Meet who?
Meet like the people that you need for your clients when you're just transitioning into.
No, because casting directors don't hang out. They're busy working.
No, it is kind of true. It is kind of true. But you seem like you would be the one that would like find that one time where they decide to go somewhere and you would be there.
Maybe a comedy agent or a comedy manager might do that. They go to the clubs, but that was not what I was doing.
So, all right. So you get into that. What was it about managing that like made you kind of stay there? Like, was it just you're comfortable? Did you just kind of feel a knack for it?
There were a couple of aspects to it. I was not an actor, but I was good at helping people get through the door. And then after that, it was up to them. And I'll go back to my days in the music business, that after I produced an act and I bring their tapes, all over Midtown. I'd have appointments all over town, auditioning a demo for here, auditioning a demo for there. And I was getting tired. I was walking around miles and going up to offices, sometimes getting positive feedback, sometimes not. So I was in effect auditioning, although it wasn't my stuff. Well, sometimes they'd bring around my stuff, but more often than not, it was other people's. And I realized with actors, I'll send them out. They can go do the auditioning. I'll stay home. So it was a little bit of like, I'm too old for this. Let them go audition. But but helping someone get an audition, it's a really good feeling. Because there's so many people trying to get an audition. And then I'd help people find an agent, because people confuse agents and managers. There is a little overlap, and but there are some duties that are different and some that overlap. And but helping somebody get to where they want to go is very, very satisfying.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, I've literally found someone in the subway with next to no credits, just a couple of off
Yeah.
Broadway tours, and transforming that person into a series regular. That's that's a whole scope. So I don't. I like getting some established people, but I also get a lot of satisfaction about someone who's got absolutely nothing and helping them build and guiding them through the process and helping them avoid the mistakes that most
Yeah.
everybody would make. And it's just accelerate them through the process and getting them the opportunities they can. Because once they have the opportunities, it's out of my hands. I
Yeah.
say once you are in the casting office, and now everything until years, years ago was live in person. Now everything's virtual and self-taping. But once you get that call to audition, whether it's in person or virtual or self-taping, no longer in my hands. You do what you think is best. You make your best guess, because everybody in this business is guessing. And I learned that in the music business. I'll go back again to a meeting with that album I made with that group from Pennsylvania. And at 10:30 in the morning, I had an appointment with a big record company, and the guys he played the whole thing, both sides. Depends to play a song or two and see if they like it or not. But he played the whole thing back, both sides, which was a very good sign. And he's sitting back in his chair. He puts his feet up. He's tapping. He's playing air drums. He's banging his ashtray, and he's juking his head. And he's finished. He says, "You know what? I like the group. Don't hear the music." Okay, it's subjective. Then that afternoon, at another meeting with another big A&R guy, same routine. Puts on the disc, plays both sides, playing air drums, playing air guitar to the lead guitar, banging on the ashtray. At the end, he says, "You know what?" He said the opposite. Whatever I said before. I really like the music, but I don't hear the band. So at that point, revelation. They're all guessing.
Yeah.
They're
It's
afraid
true.
to say yes. They don't want to get fired. So they're only going with their surest shot. You know, if a known record producer with a long tracker comes in, they're going to get the benefit of the doubt. But
That's usually how it goes
yeah,
in
so
anything.
yes. So same. I apply the same thing with that. You can have you start at the bottom. We decide which picture to send in. Picture is going to get their attention. What tape is going to get their attention? And if they ask you at audition, you have to make your choices in how you deliver your lines. Parrot ate the cracker. The parrot ate the cracker. There's different ways to emphasize. Your hair is going to be owned a certain way. What are you going to wear? So these are your guesses. And then the casting director guesses which actor fulfills what the producer is looking for. Then the producer guesses which actors work well together. And these are all, best guesses, you know, based upon years of experience. And then it gets, wow, we have a thing. We've put together a whole cast to do a pilot. Well, they've guessed about the script, guessed about the story, guessed about all the actors. They've guessed which director they want to have. They guess which producer they want to have. They guess which guy writes the music for the background. They guess which script writers fulfill this best. Then it gets shot. Then it goes to the head of the network. Are we going to put this on as a possible show? Let's try the pilot episode, see if there's a reaction.
Yeah.
Okay, let's guess. Do we put this on Thursday at 9? Do we put this on Tuesday at 8? So they're all guessing all the way up and down the line. So now by the time you get to the network executives, they're making 15, 20 million a year. There's a level of expertise, and the show fails. They're all guessing. We're all guessing.
Yeah. And that's
So
the
all we
great
can do is
thing.
make. Yeah, go ahead.
That's a great thing for actors to know, because I think a lot of actors like to think that these people know everything. It's like a lot of it is guesswork. A lot of it is not knowing exactly. They're going on gut instinct, like you said. The top person is going to have the benefit of the doubt,
Mhm.
But if it goes bad, they're also going to,
It
I
didn't
mean,
work,
unless you're like,
but because you still made money for everybody. So I just tell them it's got to be fun. If it's not fun, don't do it. You got to be
Yeah.
enjoying yourself.
David Lynch
If you're
told
enjoying yourself,
David Lynch told Billy Ray Cyrus. He said, "Look, if you're having fun, we're having fun." This is on
exactly.
Mulholland Drive,
Uh-huh.
and I think actors forget that
Yeah.
they need to have fun. What do you
The, the
think
the
is?
job is secondary. Getting there's something. I had a client who finally, after hundreds and hundreds of auditions, booked a lead role on a soap she was on for 10 years till the soap went off the air. And he was always feeling guilty about not going out on auditions. I said, but you have a job. She
Yeah.
was so used to going on auditions that the fact that she was not going on auditions because she actually succeeded.
Okay, that about does it for part 2 of my interview with Seth Greenky. I hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank him personally for coming on. As always, you can find me at Justin Yachts. Please like, share, and subscribe, and consider checking out the YouTube channel. And I will see you next time on the DMF.